Hi everyone, welcome to our first effort to do a little online instruction. We'll see how this goes, give me some feedback, and we'll try to find what's most useful. So to summarize what we've been looking at with contract verbs from Croy chapter 21. Contract verbs come in three varieties. Epsilon contract verbs like poieo, alpha contract verbs agapao, and omicron contract verbs like pleirao. One of the first things to note we talked about today is that these lexical forms that we learn, when we learn a new vocabulary word and it says poieo or agapao, that's not a form that will actually occur. That's not what the verb looks like when conjugated. What that lexical form is telling you is that the stem of this verb is poie with a little contract vowel, and upon that stem you're going to add your usual conjugational endings. O, ace, a, amen, ete, usi, and so on. And the reason you learn the lexical form uncontracted is that that lets you know what the contracted conjugated form is going to look like. So if it's an epsilon contract verb, epsilon and omega are going to combine to give you poio. That's what the verb I make or I do actually looks like when conjugated. Poie plus ace is going to give you poies. Poie plus a, poie. So far, those all look exactly like, except for the accent, exactly like what we're familiar with. But there will be some variation. So poie plus amen for the first person plural will give us poiumen. The reason being, epsilon combines with omicron to form u. And poiumen is not a form we've seen before. We haven't seen verbs that conjugated with umen for the first person plural, although I think you'll agree it's not that hard to recognize. Likewise, the second person plural, poiet plus ete, gives you poiete. Because Croy has already given you handy charts, I'm not going to do the same thing with agapao and pleirao, that is alpha and omicron contract verbs, but you can look in the charts in the back and you can see exactly what happens when that alpha or that omicron combines with our conjugational endings. The next thing to talk about is that the contract verbs only behave in a peculiar way in the present system. And by present system, I mean things that use the first principal part. So to stick with our example, poieo, we'll make the present from it, as we just did here. Here's the present tense. We'll also make the imperfect from it. So what are the ingredients of the imperfect? We have a temporal augment, epsilon. We have our present stem, poie. And then we have our secondary endings, on, as, amen, ete, on. Once you know that much, the same rules of contraction apply. Epsilon plus omicron gives you omicron upsilon. So epoiun is how you would say I was making or I was doing. The same conjugated endings now combine with a contract vowel to give us slightly unfamiliar looking endings. And this is all the more true for alpha contract verbs, where agapao will give us agapone. The other thing we make from the present stem, from the first principal part, is the present participle. And how do we make present participles? We take the present stem and we add our participial endings. Our participial endings are things like own for masculine, usa for feminine, on for neuter. And so you take poie and combine it, and this epsilon will disappear. It will somehow merge with the first vowel or diphthong it encounters. Let's have a look at one of those in action. Ha poion, here in red, the one doing. How did we get poion? We took poie, the uncontracted form, combined it with our participial ending, our masculine ending. The epsilon is absorbed, and you get poion, the masculine participle for the one doing. Since we're here in Matthew 7:21, we actually get to illustrate another topic from this week's lesson, and that is the use of pas. For the most part, our word pas in the feminine pasa, in the neuter pan, is not going to cause you that much trouble. It means all or every, and it's used fairly similarly in Greek to how it's used in English. But one common way of using it that could be confusing is you use pas plus an articular participle to say everyone who, or if it were plural, all who. So let's illustrate that here. Matthew 7:21, Jesus says, not everyone, not all who say, literally everyone, the saying one. But more idiomatically, not all who say to me, Lord, Lord, eis elucitai, will enter. There's the future from eis erkomai, will enter into the kingdom of heaven. But rather, who will enter? Here's the answer. You get another participle. The one doing the will of my Father in heaven. While we're still in the Sermon on the Mount, I'll give you two other examples of this, of both issues, contract verbs forming participles and the use of pas. So in Matthew 7:8, Jesus says, pas ha aiton lambane. Aiton is one of our vocabulary words. It's from aiteo. And here we have aiteo contracted with a participial ending, which gives us aiton. Everyone who asks, and that's our subject, and then it has a finite verb. Everyone who asks, lambane, receives. And the person who, zaiton, finds. What's zaiton? This is from zaiteo, another contract verb, with our participial ending. So a couple of different vocabulary words, aiteo, to ask, zaiteo, to seek. And in fact, other vocabulary words you already know. Lambane means to receive. Hauriske means to find. So everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds. I want to look at participles that are a little more difficult to recognize. So let's take here just our standard participle, a verb like ago, to lead. And here's the full paradigm of the participle. Agon, agusa, agon. So on, usa, on are our endings. In the plurals, ontes, usai, onta. If that is a little rusty, have a review of it, please. So with a standard verb like ago, not a contract verb, we just tack these on, usa, on endings to the end. Let's now come to a verb like laleo. If we wanted to add the masculine plural, lale plus ontes, here's our ontes ending. Epsilon and omicron combine to give us u, laluntes. And if we wanted to make a neuter singular, we had some neuter things speaking, then we take lale plus on, and the epsilon and the omicron follow the same rules, lalun. So that's a neuter singular participle, that's a masculine plural, and Matthew again conveniently provides us a verse with both of those forms. Jesus says, Ugar humes este, hoi laluntes. For you all are not, you are not, hoi laluntes, the ones speaking. And now we're going to get the neuter version, but it is the pneuma, the spirit of the Father, of your Father, which is ta lalun, which is speaking in you. So this is just a chance to have a look at how contract verbs will give us forms that do look a little different. Lalun is the neuter participle instead of agon. If it's a non-contract verb, with an epsilon contract verb, we're going to get un. Final thing to note. As I said at the beginning, we'll say again at the end, we have 6 principal parts, and contract verbs are only different in the first principal part. So here are our 6 principal parts of plerao, to fulfill. Plerao, pleroso, eplerosa, pepleroka, pepleromai, eplerothane. Please practice saying these aloud, because as I've said before, the cadence is useful, and it's really useful with contract verbs because that short contract vowel will usually lengthen. Omicrons lengthen to omega throughout the rest of the principal parts. And all those other principal parts are perfectly regular. So if you wanted to make an aorist of plerao, you just take eplerosa. And that's a normal first aorist. There's our epsilon, there's our aorist stem, there's our first aorist ending, sa, sas, se, and so on. If you wanted to make an aorist passive, I was fulfilled, eplerothen. And if you wanted to make a future passive, which also comes from the 6th principal part, you'd get rid of the augment, you'd have plerothe, and you'd add your setai. It will be fulfilled, plerothesetai. All right, we will wrap up this first introduction for today. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you all on Monday.